Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another topic. The topic today, mailing and shipping services. And so we're just going to talk about how mailing services and shipping services, how they work in an office environment. Because maybe not all companies have an actual mail room, but there are some big companies, because they get so much mail, they actually need to have a mailing room and they need to have staff that are designated to make sure mail gets where it needs to get and does what it needs to do, pretty much. So we're going to talk about the different types of services underneath postal mail, using a post office as well as internally, and look at some things and procedures that are done when receiving and sending out mail. So let's get into it. Of course, welcome to the virtual space. Let's work together to learn, share ideas, participate, and learn something new. The wise always seek knowledge. So, postal service, using postal services. When we talk about postal services, we're actually talking about going through the post office to send mail out to different locations. So, believe it or not, I know mail seems kind of old fashioned and, well, compared to electronic mail, email, but there are some companies that still use postal services. Not everybody can be reached by email, and sometimes it's just easier to send things via the postal service. Maybe some persons don't want everything electronically. Sometimes they want an original document. Original documents most times are going to come through postal services. So original legal documents, original bills that are signed off on by certain people, all these things tend to come through postal services, or companies make sure that they do. At the end of the month, some companies are still sending out mailed invoices and mailed statements to their customers for payment. So mailing, although it seems a bit old, is still kind of relevant today. It's still being used in business today, especially in some companies. Companies must choose a postal service based on how urgent or how important the item is. That's the class of it. And then they have to look at how they want it to arrive, the delivery option. So as we talk about postal services, we're going to get into the types of services that a company provides, or that the post office provides to companies. And companies ultimately have to decide which particular service they actually want to go with. And so, like it says below, it's going to be based on the class of the service itself, or how they want it to be delivered. So how quickly they want it to get there, how important it is, does it need to be protected? That affects the class that we choose. And then the delivery option is how we want it to arrive. And that affects how it's going to be delivered. When we talk about classes of mail, so like I said, classes of mail is affecting how urgent it is and how important it is, that we have a number of classes that you can send mail by. Of course, we have our first two, domestic and international mail. And of course, that's just domestic mail. It's just mail that's sent to local individuals. International mail is mail that's sent outside of the country itself. So sending something from the Bahamas out to Spain is international mail. From the Bahamas to San Salvador is considered domestic mail. First class mail is something that it's an option that you can choose to send mail if you want it to arrive very quickly. And so if you want it to arrive by the next day, you would send mail in first class mail. And so of the classes, we have first, second, third, and fourth, with the first being the fastest. And as time goes on, they decrease in its speed. And second class, of course, it's going to be a bit faster, but it's not as fast as first class mail, of course, because you're going to send items in second class if it's not as urgent. So things like newspapers and magazines tend to fall within that category of second class mail. When we have third class mail and fourth class mail, all of these mails tend to include printed matter. So that's documents, booklets, things that are printed on a piece of paper, go first, second, third, and fourth class mail. I wanted to put that out there. Third and fourth class mail, it all depends on the weight of the mail itself, because if the matter is printed and it's less than 1 pound or 16 ounces, it can fall under the category of third class. So if you don't necessarily want it to arrive right away, it's not considered to be second class, and you're going to go with third class mail as long as it weighs less than 1 pound. Once it weighs more than 1 pound and it's still paper and printed material, then you're going to move it on to fourth class mail. All right. And so I highlighted 1 pound or 16 ounces because that's very important to remember in the event that you get questions calculating the cost of mail. 1 pound is the same as 16 ounces. Next, we have priority mail. And so when we think priority, it's important. And so because it's so important, it not only arrives in a good time, but it's also registered. We're keeping track of it. We're registering it and recording when it's actually been delivered. And that mail is given priority over all other mails. So if you decide that you want this mail, your piece of mail to have priority, you would go priority mail over first class mail, because then it will be given priority over everything else. Parcel post is used when we're talking about heavy envelopes or small packages. An envelope may have something in it that's very heavy. It can't be sent third, fourth, fifth, or any class at all. It has to be sent via parcel post. So that's very common in the Bahamas as well. We have express mail, which is the fastest method, faster than first class mail. And so express mail gets your mail there as soon as possible. And then, of course, standard mail. When we think standard, that's just your regular old mail. And so it's the cheapest way to send mail because there's no real priority and there's no real registering of the mail. So it's just standard mail. It's just regular basic method of sending mail. So when it comes to these various classes, the price of sending items to these various classes are all going to vary based on the rate that the postal service has for each of the classes. So of course, first and second class may be more expensive than third and fourth. Like it says, express mail, the fastest but most costly. Priority mail, going to be costly. Parcel post is going to be a little bit more costly as well because you're dealing with heavier items. And when it comes to mail, what affects the price of sending mail is going to be the heaviness of the package and the class that you select. So if you're dealing with packages and heavy envelopes, they might be more costly than sending a very thin letter. And so all of these affect the cost of the mail itself when you're selecting a service from the post office. Delivery options are next, which involve the way that it's delivered to whomever the receiver of the mail is. And so when we talk about delivery options, we have the first one being collect on delivery and COD. In other words, that means they're collecting the funds for this item on delivery. So the person receiving the mail is the one who's going to pay for the actual mail. And so that's an option to have when it comes to delivery. We also have electronic mail because mail can be delivered electronically as well, or email. And so when it comes to speed of delivery, this is best for best speed of the delivery if your internet makes sense. All right. Or if the person has internet and access to their internet, their email. We have registered or insured mail, which is used for money and valuable items. So when you're sending money and valuable items, we're registering it. And it's insured against theft, loss, or damage. And it's usually somebody has to sign for that piece of mail because it's registered. And so on delivery, you're asking somebody to sign to say that it was actually delivered because these items are just so valuable. That's your registered or insured mail. Proof of mailing or delivery is just similar to what I was talking about. Sometimes you can just opt to avoid all of this stuff and just pay for proof of mailing or delivery to be sent back to you. So proof that it was actually mailed, proof that it was actually delivered. That's an additional cost as well. And then courier service, which is delivery via private companies when a specific delivery time is needed. When it comes to couriers, not necessarily in the Bahamas, we're trying to get there, but some couriers, what they do is they want to deliver items directly to you as soon as possible. And so that's a delivery option when you want things to be given to you at by a certain time, or very quickly, or directly to your door in some instances. Those are your delivery options. Now, all of these options, these classes, these options are all important, but how does the company express what they want to the post office? The way that the company communicates to the post office is via the actual envelope. Because think about it, they don't see the inside, they don't see the letter itself, but they can see the envelope. And so on the envelope, based on the class that you've selected for your mail or your options, what you're going to do is you're going to put information actually right underneath the stamp when you have a mailing notation. That's what we call a mailing notation. And so a mailing notation is just wording that's placed on the envelope that lets the post office know what service you want this envelope to be sent under. And so this is just an example of an envelope here that normally includes in the top left corner the return address or the address of the sender. In the center is normally the recipient's address, the address of the receiver. And then in the top right corner is usually the stamp. And underneath, we actually have our mailing notation. Now, I'll point out that with the stamp, as it relates to the stamp actually is proof of payment for the service that you've gotten. So when you see stamps and you see 15 cents and whatnot, that should tell you that this piece of this envelope itself costs 15 cents to send on the whatever specific manner. All right. And so it's not on here directly, but what I wanted to point out is that these are very common mailing notations that actually attract a specific charge. We have certified mail. Once mail is certified, what you're going to see underneath the stamp is the word certified in all caps. If it's registered, you see registered in all caps. Air mail, which is mail that's just sent by air, you asking them to send it on a flight, on a plane, and that's usually an extra cost because it's more costly to send by plane than it is by any other form like train or mail or something like that, because air mail is quicker. Sorry. Express is also one as well. First class, second class, third and fourth. All of these, if I go back, all of our classes of mail, like I say, not these two, but all of these classes of mail tend to attract a special cost. And therefore, if you have them on your envelope, you're expected to pay an additional fee in the form of more stamps in order to get that mail sent in that manner. Okay. And so normally if it's standard, it doesn't really, you don't not necessarily have to put standard on there. The absence of a mailing notation suggests that it's a standard fee, it's a regular fee. Okay. Now, there are some mailing notations, and I've seen this question before, that do not require an additional fee. And the reason is because they have nothing to do with the post office. The post office does nothing extra when these mailing notations are there. And these are actually considered special notations. And they oftentimes are found underneath the return address. And so things like personal has nothing to do with the post office because they don't open mail. That's telling you that, hey, you can't open this mail because this mail is personal. Same thing with confidential, has nothing to do with the post office because they don't open the mail. And so therefore, personal or confidential can be here, or they can be somewhere in the at the top or the address in the addressee area. But they are mailing notations, hand delivery, that just specify something else. And they are most of the times instructions to a company's mailing department or postal department or whatever you want to call it, not really to the post office, which is why they don't incur any additional costs. When we talk about mail and mail services, we just talked about the services provided by the post office. Now let's talk about what happens in the office of a company that has a mailroom. And so a mailroom is just going to be a room designated for receiving mail, usually a company that receives a whole heap of mail. They receive mail, and what they do is they process the mail. So either they're processing incoming mail, which is mail coming into the company, or they're processing outgoing mail, which is mail that they're sending out to other individuals. And so what we're going to talk about is the process of processing or dealing with incoming mail and dealing with outgoing mail, both of which tend to be done by who we call a mail clerk in the mailroom. And these are some of the tasks that the mail clerk has to do: process incoming mail, process outgoing mail. And these are pretty much the things that have to be done. There's actually the steps in processing incoming mail. So you say you're a mail clerk, and you receive a big batch of mail from the post office. You go to the post office box, collect the mail, and you come back with a whole box full of mail. What's the first thing that you do? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to sort the mail. You're going to check the mail to see if there's anything that needs to be separated. Maybe it's mail that says personal or confidential. You want to separate that from all of your other mail, because personal or confidential mail are mail that the mail clerks cannot open. Anybody receiving mail on behalf of somebody, if it says personal or confidential, you're not supposed to open it. And so the first initial sorting sorts and takes out those personal and confidential mail and puts them to the side, because all other mail is actually going to be opened, because that's the next step. After you sort out those mails that cannot be opened versus the mail that can, then you're going to open all the mail that we can open the envelopes, take out the contents, and from there, you're going to check the content to see if anything is missing, if anything's there that shouldn't be there. Maybe they say that they enclosed a check, or maybe they enclosed a document. If you don't see that document, or if you don't see that check, then you need to put it back together, contact the person that sent the mail, and let them know, hey, something is missing. And so that's your third step. You're checking to make sure the appropriate information is included inside of the mail. You're checking to see that there's a signature, and that there's a return address and a date, because if not, it's something you want to investigate further. After you check for missing information, anything that is missing, you want to follow up on or push to the side and follow up on at a later date. From there, you're going to stamp and date the mail that you actually received, and you're going to sort the mail at the same time. So you're going to normally they have a stamp and they put the day's date that the mail was received, so that there's evidence of when this letter or when this document was actually received by the company. And so the mail clerk is going to stamp the date on it, and then group all of the mail based on who it's supposed to go to. If there are 10 pieces of mail there and 3 of them are for accounts and the rest for the president, then we're going to put the ones for the president together and the ones for the accounts department together. And when we're sending them up, we're going to send all of them up one time. We're not going to send piece mail. We're going to put together everything and send it all one time, where they need to go in batches oftentimes. And so once the mail is sorted out, that's when you start to do things like route and distribute the mail. When we talk about routing, there could be instances where maybe it's a letter that was sent, and the letter has to go to multiple people. Routing, when we think of a route, think of a traffic route or a route along, a street. And we're passing through these different cities, passing through different places. And so when we're routing the mail, we're sending a particular piece of mail to multiple people, having them acknowledge that they've seen it by signing what we call a routing slip. And so that information is sent to whoever needs to see one particular email, one particular mail, and then it goes where it needs to go, to the relevant persons. Later on, we'll look at what a routing slip looks like. Once any routing is done, or anything sent out that needs to be routed, Then we distribute the mail by sending it to whomever it needs to go to in the appropriate department or person. So the 3 that should go to the accounts department will then be dropped off to either the person in charge or the administrative person in the accounts department. And so, like I said, it starts from you getting the mail, sorting it, identifying what you can open, what you can't open, opening what you can, checking to make sure there's nothing missing, stamping and dating them, and then sorting them again based on who they're going to or who the mail is for, routing any mail that needs to be routed, and then distributing the mail overall where they need to go. And so, just like I said, here's an example of a referral slip and a routing slip. These are both used when routing mail. A referral slip is attached to mail that requires actions by others. So let's say it's a document that requires somebody to complete something or write, like it says in this instance, please write a reply. So a referral slip is sent when you want somebody to do something. And so what happens is they prepared this is a form, and they prepared it for Alice Leary on this day. And what happens is they would have attached this to the document that they sent to Miss Leary. And so they would have ticked, please write a reply for my signature. So they want Miss Leary to write a reply to the email or the mail that's attached. And then Ross Darlington is going to get it back and sign off on the new letter. And it says the letter should not go out no later than 9:25, meaning that they're giving Miss Leary a time limit. And so this referral slip is giving Miss Leary an option, letting her know that, hey, this needs to get done. A routing slip, however, is just used to forward mails to others. So it's not necessarily requiring you to do anything other than read the document. And so here's an example from Ryan Talbert on this day. And this, whatever piece of mail this is attached to, it's routing it so that Carlson, Henson, Lansing, and Williams have to see this piece of mail. And so he most likely would have ticked this, and the date forwarded to a copy of was forwarded to them. He would have identified the date that it was sent to them for their records. And he's asking you to please route and return to me. So send it around to relevant persons and then send the original document back to me. It's just giving instructions to whomever's getting the letter and who needs to let them know who needs to see the letter or the document and what needs to be done about the letter or the document. In this case, just read and pass it back. All right, so we talked about incoming mail. Now let's talk about outgoing mail. So that's mail that's going out to different people, whether it be inside of the organization or outside. And so most of the time it's going to be outside. And so when it comes to processing outgoing mail, the steps are as follows. What happens is you first have to select the correct size of the envelope, because everything that's sent out by mail normally goes in an envelope. And so, of course, you should know there are different sizes to envelopes. We have envelopes that are a letter size and carry and hold like a full paper without folding. There are small envelopes that are maybe about this long. There's some that are about this long. So you have to choose the best size for what's being sent out so that everything fits comfortably and it does, the envelope doesn't burst open because it's too full. And so the first step is going to be to select an envelope with the right size. From that point, what you're going to do is you have to make sure you address the mail, the envelope. So address the envelope, including any mailing notations. Like we said, mailing notations can be first class, second class, third class, fourth class, express mail, priority mail, registered mail, all of those notations that tell the post office, hey, I want you to send this specifically. And so you're going to make sure, put the address on the envelope, making sure the mailing notation is where it's supposed to be and making sure the address is correct. Then from that point on, you're going to forward the correspondence appropriately, based, of course, on the size of the document that you are sending. So here's an example of a piece of paper. It's a white paper, so it's difficult to see. And so in your book, it actually shows you the right way to fold a piece of paper. And so what you should be doing is you should fold it like this, fold it over, and then fold it over like this. And the reason why there's a special way to fold the letter is because when you put the letter into the envelope, what should happen is the information should be show correctly, especially if you're using what we call a window envelope. It's just one of those envelopes with the sheer covering and the sheer plastic in the middle, because you want to make sure everything is lined up when you put it in, and you don't want to give it too many creases when you're folding an envelope. All right. And so you would fold your envelope or your information accordingly based on the size of the envelope. Of course, if it's a large envelope, you don't need to fold the information. If it's a small envelope, then of course you would have to fold it so it fits neatly into the envelope itself. After you fold the correspondence and you put it inside of the envelope, then of course you're going to seal it. And you can do that manually, which is by wetting it or by putting some glue on it, or they have some machines that can help with sealing envelopes. Some envelopes have a strip that you just peel the top off and then put it together, and it has glue on it already. Some of them require you to wet it. Straightforward, you seal the envelope. Then, of course, you select the class of service. How will it be sent? Will you be sending it first class, second class, third class, fourth class? Or how will you send your mail? That's important to note now because that affects the postage amount. And so you have to decide how you're going to send the mail. And then you're going to, from there, you're going to look at the weight of the mail. As we recall, in some instances, depending on how heavy the mail is, you have to send it in a certain class. And so you need to know what the weight of the mail is to make sure you've selected the right class. Once you've identified that, then you can apply postage to the mail itself. Now, postage, like we say, is going to be based on the service, the class of service, the weight of the mail, and any mailing notations that you add to it that tells you the weight of the mail. And so you're going to apply that postage, of course, to the top right corner of the envelope, so you can move forward. And of course, that postage is going to be based on your knowledge of the rates of the post office and your weight. And so you calculate that. And if you have to pay $1.75 for that particular letter or document, then what you need to do is get stamps that are worth $1.75, and you're going to put that in the top right corner of your envelope. And so those are our outgoing mail procedures. Here's an example of a significant part of the outgoing mail process is when we have mailing lists that we put together. So some companies, depending on how much mail they have to send out, they have to put together a listing of names and addresses of persons that they're sending mail to. So maybe, depending on the type of company it is, they might send out batches of stacks of mail to different people. And so it's just easier to have a mailing list and putting it in, let's say, a Microsoft Word system to help you to prepare all of the postage stamps and all of the addresses on the envelopes, because you're going to have to address every envelope. And could you imagine a company sending out coupons or sending out a magazine to its subscribers? Companies could have thousands of subscribers, and so it's just easier to for those companies having a list where they can go back to and upload it into Microsoft Word that helps them to be able to prepare all these envelopes with the press of a button instead of typing these addresses every time they send out mail. Because could you imagine sending out mail monthly or weekly or annually to thousands of people? It could be a tedious process. And so once these lists are created, companies tend to use these lists over and over. They just update them with new persons or persons that came off of the list, and just update them. And when they're ready to send, then they use the mailing list to help them to quickly send mail to or prepare mail for thousands or a lot of people. I wanted to point out address formats because that's a major part of outgoing procedures. Your mail isn't going to go anywhere if your address is not properly formatted. And so I just wanted to point out, in the Bahamas and in the US, what you're going to notice, the first thing in any mail that's being addressed is going to be the name of the person that's going to receive it. So in this instance, I put my name. And in the Bahamas, we have PO boxes. We don't really put street addresses because we don't deliver mails to streets. We deliver them to PO boxes. And so we put PO box. F would be just a letter actually representing the island or the city or the post office box that it's going to. So in this case, F for Freeport. And then normally there's a 5-digit number behind. After that, you're going to have the settlement, and then the island, and then the Bahamas. This is a standard format for an address in the Bahamas. So you make sure you put the PO box first, followed by settlement, island, the Bahamas, or just Bahamas in all caps. For the US, it's slightly different because they deliver door to door. You would have the name of the individual, the receiver. Then you would have their street name and the number related to their street as well, their house number, that allows the post office area to know exactly where to send something. You have the city, the state, then there's the zip code, and then normally USA below. So these are just some formats to pay attention to. Just knowing the order in which it goes is pretty important. Like I said, for Bahamians, the address includes PO box. US, it includes street address and zip code. And then there are two types of formats that they can ask you to use, USPS or OCR. When it comes to USPS format is usually just making sure that it looks like this and it's in all caps, versus OCR, it's all caps, but normally you exclude any punctuation. So like this comma here, comma, dot, dot, dash, all of that is going to be excluded. Everything would be in all caps. And that would be your basic formats for these letters. All right, so now let's talk about what's used in a mailing department for persons that are working with mail. We have key mailing equipment such as letter openers, this is a letter opener here. It helps you to quickly open letter. Mail merge, which is a system that's used with Microsoft Word that works along with that mailing list that I showed you. You normally have that information in there. You would upload it and it would create the envelopes for you, or put the actual addresses at the top of each of the letters if you have a form letter prepared. So it's very, very helpful. You have things like addressing machines that help putting the addresses on everything. Postage scales, which allow you to be able to weigh your mail, because of course, the weight of the mail affects the cost of the mail, of sending out mail. We have franking machines, which can look similar to something like this, where they provide assistance with sending out printing and printing stamps on things and things like that. They assist with that. We have collating machines, and whenever we hear the word collate, we're referring to putting things in order based on any copying. So this is a good example of a collating machine, because when you send anything through it, it's going to put it in order based on these steps. We have machines that assist with folding, inserting, and sealing mail. So really big companies that have actual mail rooms are going to invest in these really big and very useful machines, because they make life easier for the mail clerk. And so that's something that's going to be in there, as well as an OCR barcode reader. If you don't remember what OCR is, optional character reader. And so what happens is it assists persons in the department by allowing it prints a barcode on the envelope itself. which makes it a whole lot easier. So you have to have certain things in place, certain things have to be done. You have to put it in OCR format for it to properly read the addresses. But essentially that's what an OCR barcode scanner is. It prints a barcode on each envelope that you're able to scan to make life easier at the post office when we're determining where things should go and letting us know where things are in the process of postage. Okay, so those are your mailing equipment. And finally, let's talk about calculating postage costs. Now, like I've been saying from the beginning, the cost of postage is going to depend on the weight of whatever it is that you're sending, as well as the type of service that you selected to be used with the post office service. And so normally when they give you questions, these questions will have two parts. The first part is going to be based on the weight. It's going to tell you the calculation of the weight as relates to the price. And then it's going to give you the prices per weight. So here's an example that I found. I have the first ounce is one price and all other ounces are a separate price. When it comes like that, you simply follow the pricing instruction. So it could say something as in the first ounce, they're charging 15 cents on the first ounce and 12 cents on every other ounce. That's a common way I've seen it being asked, or every other partial ounce or whatnot. And so what that means is you simply follow the pricing structure. If the first ounce is 15 cents and every other ounce is 12 cents a pound, sorry, every other ounce is 12 cents an ounce, what you're going to do is you are going to, depending on the weight of the mail itself, you're going to take that and you're going to break it down and multiply the first ounce by that 15 cents and the other ounces you want to multiply by the 12, add them together, and you should get the postage cost. And so when we do the zoom in, I'll go into a little bit more detail on examples for calculating the postage cost. But for now, just know that they're going to give you a pricing structure based on weight, and you have to apply it based on the tiers that they give you. Okay. And so that's it for postal service. With postal service, we talked a lot about the fact that not every company has mailing services, depending on the frequency and the amount of mail that needs to be sent by the company. And so depending on that, we may even have a mailroom, and the mailroom is going to be filled with mail clerks that assist with sending out and incoming mail. There's some mail that's considered important, like registered mail, confidential mail, personal mail that's normally tracked. So there's a mailing log or something like that, that the mailing clerk can be responsible for tracking those important or those key mails, noting when they came in. We remember that, or we should remember that there are incoming procedures when mail comes in. What needs to happen is they need to be sorted based on what can be opened versus what can't. Then from there, they need to be opened. They need to be inspected for missing parts, dated and stamped and sorted again to know where they're going in the office. Once that happens, it's routed and then it's going to be distributed and sent to whomever the mail is for. When it comes to outgoing mail services, we have to remember that it all starts with selecting the right envelope. So having a proper envelope size, followed by identifying any mailing notations that need to be on the envelope, selecting the service, folding the correspondence or folding the paper, sealing that paper, putting it in there, identifying the class that you want to send it as. Then we're going to do things like weigh it to find out how much it weighs. That affects our cost. And then we're going to calculate the cost and apply a postage stamp to it. And so all of that is important. Ingoing procedures, outgoing procedures. If you are a person working as a mail clerk and you want to assist your supervisors, some things that you can do are you can start the log. You can start to open documents on their behalf. You can actually do some annotations as well, where you're identifying key things on the letter that maybe will help your boss to be able to quickly understand what the letter says. All of these things are done normally within a mailing department or by whomever, if it's not a full mailing department, whoever's responsible for collecting mail, whether it's a receptionist, then that means some of these tasks will be her tasks as well. She can prepare mailing lists. He or she can prepare mailing lists. They can prepare routing slips, referral slips that help the process and help persons to understand that, hey, I want you to see this document, which is a routing slip, or hey, I want you to see this document and there's something I need you to do, which is a referral slip. And so all of that happens throughout the mailing process to make the company aware of what mail is coming in and to make sure that anything they're trying to send out is properly sent out and properly documented. And so that's it for postal service. Feel free to get in touch if you have any questions. Of course, there's my email and there's my Insta. So hit me up if you have any questions, and happy studying. Hi, Brenda here. I just want to take the time to say thank you for choosing this course. Thank you for choosing yourself and for preparing as you should for office procedures BGCSE. Look forward to more from me and Business Teacher Pal, and I look forward to seeing you in other classes. Bye.